Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Mariana, talking here. If you're new, hello, welcome here. Today I'm gonna show you guys a flip through of my college notebooks, and I always keep my sheets and notebooks and stuff like that in these transparent folders. This is the method I use to organize my papers, and so if you guys want to know more about that, I have a video about it and I'll link it below. So I'll be starting off with this subject, which is solid mechanics. And this is one of the subjects I was taking this semester. I am currently in the 7th semester of mechanical engineering. And yeah, that's it. So for each subject, I always choose a color. In this case, it was green, and I always use a colored marker to start my headers and also to mark headers and subheaders. I also use markers to mark the dates of each classes I take notes of. And for my method of note taking, I prefer to keep it simple. So I usually use black pen and pencil in order to make diagrams and put some details in and stuff like that. If I need to, I can always use a sticky note as well to add more information, and that's what I do sometimes. As you can see, my notes are quite simple, like I said before, and I prefer to make it that way because it's easier and faster to take my notes while paying attention to the class. So this is one thing I always do, which is to pay attention and at the same time take notes of what is written on the board or what my teacher says. And if I need to add some information, again, I can just put it on a sticky note if my teacher says something or someone asks a question that I find interesting, I can always put it in my notebook. And as you can see, I prefer to use this yellowish colored pages because it's easier on the eyes. The light doesn't come out as bright as it would if it was a white paper, which is great because you feel less tired and it's just more comfortable to read and to study. I also always put numbers on the pages. This way it's easier to find a subject or an equation if I ever need to go back into my notes, and it's an easier way to keep things organized. That's especially important if you take notes on loose paper. This way you know the order your notes are in. One thing that I find important to mention is that if you cannot take notes while paying attention to your class, don't worry, it's normal. It's quite difficult to do it at the same time. It takes a while and don't worry about it. At some point you'll get used to it. Just the first tries, the first weeks, the first months might be difficult. So we are here on the last page, and I wrote roughly 64 pages for this subject, but I still wrote more pages on a separate notebook because this one finished, and I wrote a couple more pages on my disc bound notebook, which I have a video about also if you guys want to check it out, and I will link it below. So this next notebook is for my thermodynamics class, and for this one I put some tabs to make sure I knew which chapters I was talking about in each section of the notebook. So for this class I chose the color orange because I thought it was matching for the topic of thermodynamics, and I started off trying to fill the pages with a little bit more color, as you guys can see on the diagrams and stuff like that, but eventually I gave up on that because I'm really used to just taking notes on black pen and pencil, so it's kind of difficult to change, and it also takes much more time to take notes if you keep changing the pens you're using. So I just find it easier to keep it simple and keep it on the black pen. As you can see, this subject in particular has quite a few equations and quite a lot of diagrams. And one thing that I find very useful is to use either very light lines on your notebooks or have a grid paper. This way it's easier to know how you can fit in everything. It's easier to make graphs and stuff like that. And this specific notebook here, it's a lined, has lined paper, but the lines are very fine, so they are not very dark, which is great. And for my disc bound notebook, which I'm starting to use right now, it has dotted paper, which is even greater because the dots are very light and you almost don't see them, and they are perfect in order to fit things and draw things and stuff like that. Again, grid paper would be also very nice, but I prefer dot paper. I wrote quite a lot on this class because this was a class in which the teacher used PowerPoints in order to talk about the subjects and everything like that. And what I used to do was to write absolutely everything that was on the PowerPoint into my notebook because I prefer to read and study with my notebook rather than seeing the PowerPoints. So we're here in the last page again, and I wrote 62 pages for this subject, and I had two blank pages left, but I actually wrote about 10 pages more on my disc bound notebook with the dotted paper. And I did that because we were starting on a new topic, so I preferred to get a new notebook rather than cut it in half. Next up, I have fluids mechanic for this notebook, and for this subject I chose the color blue because it's fluids, so I thought it was matching. This particular subject was a little bit shorter because by the end of the semester my teacher got sick, so he couldn't finish the subject in its entirety, but either way it was quite an interesting topic. So this one has a lot of diagrams as well, and a lot of equations, and especially a lot of calculus and stuff like that. So it does need a little bit more space for you to make your exercises and such. So I would recommend using more pencil rather than pen, because if you want to solve an exercise, if you want to try to do an exercise and you actually mess it up, you can just erase it and do it again. That's what I did for the most part of this class. I don't know how classes work wherever you are, but in Brazil, what happens is that we have a lot of teachers that use the blackboard just to write on the equations and to write all the information for the class, which I personally really like because this way we have enough time to copy whatever he's writing on the board and also time to understand what he's saying after he finished writing everything. I know that in some places teachers use a lot of PowerPoint, and I personally really don't like PowerPoint because it's very hard to write on the notebook and to keep paying attention to the class. Anyway, this is just a personal preference. So we are here on the last page again. If we go back to the previous one, we'll see that I wrote 53 pages for this subject, and I didn't use any more pages for anything else, so it was really a shorter subject, again because my teacher got sick. The last notebook I have is for my mechanical vibrations class. I really liked this class and I thought it was very interesting. And for this one, I chose the color purple for no actual reason. And for this class, I actually did a small summary to check if I was on track with my studies and stuff like that. And as you can see, I completed the first page entirely, but the other page I didn't even touch because, by the end of the semester, you're not even caring whether you keep track of whatever you're doing. So I just stopped looking at that summary page, but I actually finished all the subject and I studied everything. I really like this notebook because it has a lot of diagrams, drawings, and it has a lot of information going on. And again, because I thought this was a very interesting subject, this was actually a class I enjoyed going to. And the only thing is that the last part of the content of this class was very hard, and I didn't entirely get it. I didn't understand it fully, so I just kind of brushed through it and pretended it was okay, which I don't suggest you do. I suggest you really try to understand what happens at the end of the semester for whatever class you're taking, because you might need this knowledge later on, and it's just interesting to know stuff, you know? Anyway, as you can see, I also have a couple of loose papers. These ones are another summary for the equations I had to know for the exam. And I usually do these summary pages right before the exam, and I take them to exam to read just before it starts. This way I refresh my memory and I know all the formulas and equations I have to know. For this class is, I think it's more helpful to read a lot and to understand the theory behind what happens rather than make a lot of exercises. In fact, the thing for this class is to really remember all the formulas and equations you have to know, because there are specific things that are repeated every topic. So it's really a class you have to know from beginning to end in order to to solve questions and solve problems. Either way, I thought it was again very interesting. So for me, it was okay to go through the entire subject before my last exam, and I really enjoyed it. The teacher was great, my classmates were great, and overall, it was a good experience. If you guys want to see my notebooks elsewhere, I actually took pictures of all the pages and put it on a Dropbox. I'll link the Dropbox here on the video. I just have to say that the content is in Portuguese, so you might not understand, but just if you want to see it again, you can just go there and check it out. So if we go back here, I think I used about 57 pages plus a couple other more, so I would say 60 pages, plus all the pages I used for the summaries and stuff like that. And I didn't use any other pages from my desk notebook for this subject. I just, again, used this entire notebook. Now I'll be putting all my notes back into each folder, and like I said before, if you guys want to know more about the organization method I use for my college stuff, you can just go check it out in my other video. I'm not sure if it's in English, but if it is in Portuguese and I don't have an English version, I'll make sure to film that for you guys if you guys want. So let me know here in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions about anything, it could not be related to this video as well, just let me know here in the comments, I'll answer as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.